This is the College Football X. John Wilkerson here with you. The game of the week this week, Liberty and Coastal Carolina. And we have both sides of the story this week on the College Football X. John Wood talks to Nick Pierce from the Liberty Football Radio Network. And Jon Nelson talks to the voice of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, Joe Cashion, to get you ready for the big game this weekend. And we'll go to the MAC where the Buffalo Bulls are having a great season. Scott Wilson from Learfield IMG College joins Jon Nelson to talk about that and about Jaret Patterson's great game last week. And Chris Mooneyham from 680 The Fan joins me as we talk the coaching carousel. So let's start the show.
Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, Jon Nelson, John Wood, and John Wilkerson.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Wood, and I want to thank you for listening to the College Football X podcast this week. Joining us now on the show is Nick Pierce, football sideline reporter for Liberty, as well as the Flames athletic audio content coordinator. Nick, welcome back to the X, my friend.
John, thanks a lot for having me.
We last spoke to you a couple of weeks ago. You're coming off a big win this weekend against UMass, a 45-0 shellacking of the Minutemen, and you're heading into our game of the week this week against Coastal Carolina. We'll get to that in a second, but overall, what's the mood in Lynchburg right now?
Everyone's really excited, John. You know, the team's back in the top 25, like you said, coming off a win over UMass, got back in the win column after the disappointment at NC State, coming up 1 point short there. But now everything's on the line this week, right? I mean, this is the biggest game of the year. You got ESPN Game Day going to be showing up in Conway for the ball game, and a chance to win 10 games for the first time since 2008. And doing it against an old rival. I mean, these two programs have history. Now, not a lot of the players that are on either roster at this point maybe were necessarily there for it, or even a lot of the coaches. But I can tell you one thing, the fans remember it, the administrators and the broadcasters, and everyone that's been following these programs, they know all about the rivalry. And for a number of years at the FCS level and in the Big South Conference, every year it seemed like that conference championship either went through Conway or it went through Lynchburg. And the team that won this game just about every year would come out as either the conference champion or co-champion at the least. So there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of reason to be excited. And now certainly with both these teams at the FBS level, at the highest level of college football, both being in the top 25, there's even more reason for excitement. And, you know, everyone's breaking out their red Beat Coastal shirts here in Lynchburg. And they're just ready for the game on Saturday.
And this week you've got two coaches going up against each other that couldn't be at any more different places in their coaching careers, right? You've got Jamie Chadwell on the sideline at Coastal, and you've got Hugh Freeze on the sideline at Liberty. What's it going to be like in this type of a rivalry, intense national spotlight game? What's the benefit of having a coach like a Hugh Freeze on the sideline to temper expectations, to kind of temper the mood in the locker room?
Well, I think it's just that. I mean, Hugh Freeze has been a part of some of the rivalries at the highest level, right? I mean, the Egg Bowl in Mississippi with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. You know, you play Auburn every year. I mean, when you're in the SEC West, I mean, you've got your designated in-state rivals, right? Like right. Auburn, Alabama, and all that. But I mean, really, all of those teams are rivals on some level, aren't they? I mean, LSU and Alabama. I mean, there is no love lost between any program in the SEC West. So it was almost like playing a rivalry game every week. That to say, I mean, who better would you want to lead your program than a guy who has been a part of some of those heated battles and had to lead his team into battle? And he talked about it a little bit on Monday during his media availability. He said, look, I would be really disappointed if, because this was a rivalry game, our guys go out there and get chippy and aren't poised.
Right.
Now, certainly there's a lot to be excited for. And I think even beyond the rivalry aspect of this, you know, as Coach Freeze said yesterday, he said, look, I don't need this to be a rivalry. These are two top 25 ball teams. You know, we're going in there playing a top 15 opponent, and we could win 10 games. That's all I need to get my juices going. And so I think that's kind of, you know, not to say that he's going to downplay things,
right.
But you know, Coach admitted on Monday he's got to be able to get himself a little bit educated on this thing, and because he wasn't here for a lot of those matchups with Coastal Carolina, and for that matter, a lot of these players weren't either. There were only two players on the Flames roster that played in the last meeting between these two programs back in 2016. So, you know, there's there'll be a little bit of edge, I'm sure. I mean, Coastal Carolina has come out with a whole lot of propaganda this week, and
right.
As well they should. But, I think once the game starts, kind of like what you said yesterday, those first series or two, and you get hit in the mouth the first time, it's just playing football.
And we've talked a lot on the X this year about quarterback running back tandems, dynamic duos. They're all over the place. And you've got two really good duos going up against each other on Saturday. You've got Grayson McCall and CJ Marable on the Chanticleers side, and you've got Joshua Mack, and Malik Willis on the Flames side. What's it going to be like to see these two dynamic duos go head-to-head on Saturday?
Well, it could be a situation where you got a lot of points being scored. I mean, both these teams are averaging close to 40 points a ball game, but I'm sure the defenses would have something to say about that. And they played well for both teams. I mean, both teams are giving up, I think, less than 20 points a game. Liberty's defense ranks 9th in the country right now in total yards allowed. Last week, they pitched a shutout against UMass, the first in 4 years for the program. So they're coming off arguably, maybe one of their better games of the year. And Coastal Carolina, I'm sure that their defense is going to be anxious to go out there and try to show that they can stop Malik Willis, something that hasn't been done a whole lot this year. So, look, I think that all the trappings are there for this to be a classic college football game. That's why game day's going there.
Right.
Why it's getting the national attention that it is here this week. It'll be interesting to see the matchup when those two teams do get out there on the field. But certainly two really good quarterbacks, Malik Willis for Liberty and Grayson McCall for Coastal.
Well, let's talk a little bit more specific X's and O's here. Liberty outgained UMass on the ground 629 yards to 227 yards on Saturday. Specifically looking at the offense, outside of Malik Willis, Joshua Mack, what are some other keys to the game offensively? What are some pieces to the puzzle that are working really well offensively for the Flames right now?
Well, I think hopefully you're able to kind of get your receiving core back together here again. And again, that's been an issue for the Flames most of the season, is being able to keep all those guys on the field at once. CJ Yarborough should be back and available this week. He did not play, I believe, was concussion protocol last week for the Flames. But he's out of that. He should be good to go here this week. So I think just having that extra target out there will be nice for Malik, but then also, like you referenced J-Mac earlier, and then Peyton Pickett just picked up an award, a national award here today. I was trying to find it in front of me. But, he was the National Player of the Week honorable mention here this week.
Oh, congrats.
He finished up with 125 yards against UMass last Friday, including a 16-yard touchdown run. So they've got a little depth there. Now, it remains to be seen if they get Shedro Lewis back, the third running back in that mix, or not. But certainly, I think that the key is going to be what it normally is for the Flames, and that's to be able to play a little bit of complementary football, have some long, sustained drives, which at the end of the UMass game they did. Right. They had about a 10, 11, 12-minute drive, something like that, to close out the game. Now, they didn't score. They had a lot of the second and third string guys out there on the field, but they just closed out the game. And that was as big a reason that the defense got the shutout probably as anything, too, is that UMass's offense wasn't on the field at the end of the ball game and most of the fourth quarter on Friday.
Right.
So I think if they can control the ball a little bit, sometimes that's good defense to keep the other offense off the field. And that's something that the Flames have done exceptionally well most of the season. I think that'll go a long way.
Now let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. You mentioned earlier about how well Liberty's nationally ranked defense is playing, giving up less than 20 points a game, pitched the shutout on Friday against UMass. What are some of the defensive keys to the game when you're going up against a Grayson McCall, CJ Marable, Jamie Chadwell type of offense?
Well, it's tough because, Jamie Chadwell certainly got some playmakers over there on that side of the ball. You've mentioned some of them already. I've watched Grayson McCall a little bit this year. The guy is an excellent decision maker, 20 touchdowns, 1 interception all year. A little bit similar in Malik Willis in that way. And he can extend plays with his legs. Maybe not quite as athletic as Malik, just from the little bit that I've seen of him up to this point, but he's not a slug back there in the pocket.
Right.
So, I think it's like any quarterback. If you can maybe get a little bit of pressure on him, don't let him, extend plays as much, kind of hem him up in the pocket, force him to make some decisions maybe that he doesn't want to make. Not a whole lot of teams have been successful doing that this year up to this point, obviously. But I think the Flames linebacker core will be key in that as well. Hopefully they can get Anthony Butler back out there on the field this week. He's been able to make a whole lot of good open field one-on-one tackles. If you go back to the Virginia Tech game, he was key in there going against Hendon Hooker as well, to try to take away some of those plus one quarterback runs.
Right.
So I think if the linebackers can play well, that would certainly go a long way. Then obviously your coverage has got to be sound in the back end.
Speaking of the secondary, what kind of impact has safety Javon Scruggs had on the Flames defense?
Well, Javon Scruggs is, they call him the general out there. I mean, he is essentially the quarterback of the defense. His communication from the front to the back is exceptional. He takes a lot of pride in it. And, he's a leader. I mean, guys listen to him. And they've been playing him a little bit closer in the box at times this year to get him up there. And so he's had some higher tackle totals in some games. I think he had 12 tackles against NC State. So he's a little closer to the action. So he's a guy that's, kind of a tweener. He can come up and help in the run game, or he can get back in pass coverage as well. But I'll tell you a guy that's been coming on here is Quentin Reese. We saw him get his first career interception this past week against UMass, and he's a guy that can flat out run. I mean, sideline to sideline, or he can stay with you in coverage on some of those deep ball routes from the outside receivers. Only a freshman, but his confidence has increased tremendously as the season has gone on, and that's certainly been a helpful thing for the Flames to have Quentin Reese and even a guy like a Marcus Haskins who's moved to corner here the last few weeks to come on out there, because the Flames lost some guys at corner last year, and to be able to have a couple of guys like that step up has been big.
We've talked offense and defense. Now let's look kind of a bigger picture. What are some of the other maybe non-obvious keys to the game? Like, don't let them score more than us, right? It could be special teams, team that makes the fewest mistakes. What are some of the other keys to the game that Liberty has to find, has to accomplish, has to execute in order to take a win away from the Chanticleers in Conway?
Well, I think, it kind of comes down to what it normally does. I mean, you gotta limit the mistakes. You gotta limit the penalties. Coastal Carolina does a very good job of that. They're one of the least penalized teams, I think, out there. Liberty, can't turn the ball over a ton and give them extra possessions and extra chances to score. You gotta be careful with the football, and then you've also got to take advantage of opportunities when you get them. Maybe that is make a play in special teams, or if they do turn it over somehow. If you get down in the red zone, score a touchdown. Don't settle for field goals. Just little things like that in a game like this where teams are so evenly matched. I think that's what it comes down to. It's just going to come down to the little things as far as who's going to be able to come out with the win. I mean, I think this is going to be a close ball game. I think I saw that Coastal was a 7-point favorite the other day. Not sure if that line's moved today or not.
The line's still at 7.
Yeah. So, that tells you right there. I mean, and then if the old theory is that you get 3 for being at home, then really it's 4. So
right.
This is going to come down to probably a score or a touchdown here or there. And, it's probably going to be whoever makes the fewest mistakes and plays within the framework that they normally play and their game plan. That's who's going to come out with a win.
Well, we've talked about on the X a lot this year about national television coverage in light of COVID and the pandemic and how it's been changing schedules and conferences starting later, kind of dribs and drabs, and how smaller conferences and smaller schools like a Liberty or Coastal Carolina have been taking complete advantage of the national exposure. And now with College Game Day being down in Conway, is the spotlight, is the fanfare, is that going to be an issue for Liberty, or is this going to be another game for you guys? Because it seems like you guys have been on national television every week.
Yeah, well, I think it's been, 5 times this team's played on national television this year. So, I mean, I don't think that the spotlight is going to bother these guys at all. I think that they, it's just going out playing football for them. Once you get past a lot of the pomp and circumstance and, if anything, I mean, look, we missed the crowds and we missed the big atmospheres and all that stuff. But if anything, that probably makes it a little bit easier. You just go out there and it's just between the lines and it's almost like Pop Warner at that point, especially with a lot of these earlier kicks. Guys are going out there early in the morning getting loose out on the field. It probably feels like the old days of going out there and playing in the Pee Wee leagues or whatever. But I don't think that the spotlight's going to bother them at all. I think that if anything, they've thrived in it. Looking at some of the games that they've been in on national TV, the Virginia Techs, the Syracuse, or whoever. So, I think that they embraced that, and I think that Hugh Freeze specifically looked at it as an opportunity to grow the program and to grow the brand. I mean, that's one of the things that he looks at, or that he said when he came in. Is like, look, when you get on national TV, you got to find a way to win, and this is a big opportunity for both teams, for that matter, to go ahead and get themselves out there, and not just get themselves out there, but show that they can compete and win.
Well, joining us on the X today has been football sideline reporter for Liberty, and I think I called you last time the king of all things content for Liberty, Nick Pierce. Nick, thank you so much for joining us again this week, my friend.
Hey, John, glad to do it. Thanks a lot for the coverage, and go Flames.
It's a 2 o'clock kickoff in Conway, South Carolina, in Brooks Stadium, as the Liberty Flames travel down to Conway to take on the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina. You're listening to the College Football X on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. Stay tuned. Be back in a flash.
Welcome back to the OSG on CFB. One of our X Factor interviews returns to the show. The play-by-play voice of Coastal Carolina, Joe Cashion. Joe, thanks for hanging out with us here on the X.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on once again. It was a blast earlier this year, and here we are doing this once again. It's fun.
All right, so game day's coming to town. How about that?
There was chatter about that over the weekend, and I was texting some people in the know who would know at our school, and I said, what do you think? And they're like, it's kind of a long shot, but we're going to give this a shot. And then when, some Power 5 games got canceled or rescheduled with different opponents, Coastal and Liberty kind of just rose to the top in terms of the game that kind of is very interesting. Ranked teams, teams that are, a combined 18-1, and so the announcement came. I got a text on it as I was driving home yesterday. It's like, of course, I'm not going to try to text and drive, but I was like, it popped up. It's like, we got it. I'm like, how about that, huh? And, from 5 o'clock on, it's been, hey, we can't wait. This is going to be great exposure for our school. Can't wait to get these guys in town, and let's do this.
I was going to say, what does it mean to a town? And, those of us here at the network, we enjoy trophy games and rivalries. We like to talk about stuff that's off the beaten track from normal conversation, whether it's Division I AA, FCS, sorry, I just dated myself, Division II, Division III, NAIA, those kinds of things. And we've always enjoyed talking about group of 5 games, group of 5 schools, group of 5 locales. What do you think this is going to mean to the Coastal Carolina community to have this happen there?
I think this is invaluable exposure, John. I mean, I just, for 3 hours, we're going to be the center of the college football world this coming Saturday, and for the Sun Belt Conference, this is the first time that a Sun Belt team has hosted a college game day experience. I know the, Appalachian people are kind of scratching their heads thinking, here it is. And we've been kings of the conference for a bunch of years, and here comes Coastal out of the wild blue yonder having this magical year, and then they get game day. But I mean, hey, right place at the right time. We're having a great year, a once in a lifetime maybe kind of season in the type of year that it is, when you break it all down. But just to have this show in town and to have them on our campus and talking about Coastal and the national exposure that just in terms of new students and enrollments and applications and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I can't even put a price tag on it. I mean, it's like all the games that we've had on national television this year. We've had 8 of our 9 games on national linear TV, and the Liberty game will be 9 out of 10 now. I mean, the exposure is just enormous. You can't put a price tag on it again, and it's just unbelievable, really unbelievable.
So when you look at this season, and you can take this whichever direction you like, whether we're talking about off the field or on the field, is there anything left to surprise you about this year? Have you constantly been surprised? I mean, what's been your vibe about this whole season?
My thought is these guys came ready to play in 2020, and they have kept a level of play through 9 games that I've never seen us do. Honestly, it's hard to imagine that you can go through a season without having that one stumble, that one hiccup, that one game where it just isn't clicking for whatever reason. I mean, your kids may put in a great week of practice, they may be fired up, and they may give great effort, but it just doesn't happen. That's not happened to us this season. I really thought that last Saturday at Texas State could be one of those kinds of games. I mean, we had just beaten Appalachian, biggest win that we've had since coming to FBS. That and the Louisiana wins this season, 1 and 1A. Huge win for our program to do that. And then have to go on the road in the rain at a Texas State team that's playing out the string and thought that might be a trap game. No, we just came out and took it right to them, and we've done that every game this season. We've come out with a group of kids that are ready to go. Our senior leadership has been there. Our coaching staff has gotten our guys ready to play. And, I just maybe a little surprised we hadn't had that one game yet, but hopefully we won't, and we'll keep this thing going all the way through the end of the Sun Belt Championship, and then whatever comes after that.
When you look at last week, I know that you'd mentioned that a lot of folks maybe thought that this one could be one of those trap games going up against Texas State, who came into the game at 2-9. But you're 35-7 at the break, and by the time that you're done, you end up with Torrance Marable rushing for more yards than Grayson McCall actually threw in the game. What was your breakdown of 35-7 at the half and then getting it done from there?
Just keep it on the ground, keep it simple. No need to put Grayson in harm's way out there. Yeah, again, the elements were bad. It's not particularly conducive for an effective passing game, trying to run routes and make cuts and all that kind of stuff. If you could run the ball and be effective at it, do it. And CJ was just having a big time day, the second best day of his career. And our offensive line just did a great job of creating seams and holes and whatnot. And he has great vision and cutback ability. And just get him the ball. Get him and Reese White the ball and Shamari Jones the ball. Just feed your running game. You're up 35-7, like you said, at the half. Don't get cute. Just keep it on the ground and get on the plane with that Sun Belt East Division championship and get out of town. That's what we did. And
on defense, obviously, when Taryn has a game like he does, 5 tackles, 1 assist, 2.5 sacks. Obviously, it's part of the signature of the defense that you've had this year, but it was his numbers at the top of the ladder.
No question. Once again, Conference Defensive Player of the Week. And I'll tell you what, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, concerned about where we would be in terms of our heads and our mental game going into that after the App win. He comes out on the first snap and just blows up the guy in front of him and sacks the quarterback for a 9-yard loss. And I looked at Lane Harris, my partner. I said, we're ready to go, Lane. Don't have to worry about anything today. Teron is ready. He's come ready. And the rest of the guys came ready too. And once again, he has a big game. And that young man will play on Sundays. And I think he ought to be the Conference Defensive Player of the Year in our league. I really do.
When you look at Liberty, and Liberty is another team that has been getting a lot of the spotlight this year in 2020. Obviously, Hugh Freeze, everyone knows that his pedigree has been part and parcel to drawing that attention. But like you and like Coastal, they've had one of those years where they've knocked off some big names. They've gotten a lot of exposure. What has been the vibe with the team about going up against another team that's doing just as well here in 2020?
Liberty used to be the team that Coastal had to beat back in the old Big South Conference. And the mantra this week is this game is important. And I actually did a little video for the guys yesterday. I said, look, guys, a lot of you guys were not around last time we played them in 2016. I'm going to tell you this. It's important to people like me. It's important to a lot of folks around Coastal. We played Liberty 14 times back in the day, and it was 7-7. And a lot of those games had conference supremacy on the line. They had a playoff berth perhaps on the line, bragging rights. They didn't like us. We didn't like them. And that's the way a rivalry ought to be, and a lot of us still remember that. And when this game popped up on the schedule, when everything got reworked and schedules blown up, and we happened to have a date that would coincide with Liberty to get them on the schedule to get a game in, I started rubbing my hands. I thought, all right, let's get these guys in town and let's renew this thing. And so hopefully our guys will pick up on how important it is and how it used to be. this was a big game. I mean, this was one that we'd go to Lynchburg and their people would be loud and obnoxious, and it was great. And, they'd come here to Conway and it'd be the same. So, important that our kids understand that, and important too, because the college football playoff and that New Year's Six is still out there within our grasp, and we've got to continue to win. So there are a lot of things that are still, right there for the taking, and we got to take this game seriously. And I hope our kids understand, that Liberty was the game, and it still is for a lot of people, including me.
What's it like to actually say a sentence like the one that you just did in that paragraph where you're talking about the New Year's Six is still in play? What's it like to actually say a sentence like that when you're talking about a team that you've been a part of the fabric of that's a part of the Sun Belt Conference?
Oh, if you'd have told me that I would have said that about 6 or 7 months ago, John, I'd have said, you're absolutely out of your mind. Are you kidding me? I knew that we would be better, okay, but this is only our 4th year of FBS, and I knew that we still had some growing to do as an FBS program. We hadn't had a winning season yet at this level, 3-9 and then 2-5-7 seasons coming up to FBS. But, there I am last Tuesday, and there we are in the college football playoff rankings. Low to a lot of our people, maybe low to me too, at number 20 perhaps, and looking ahead at some of the teams that we've beaten that had beaten them. If you play that transitive property of football, that kind of stuff, but we're still right there in the hunt for New Year's Six. I mean, if things happen, we can continue to climb up, and maybe Cincinnati gets knocked off ahead of us, and maybe some things happen, and I'll be interested to see what the rankings are this week. But, yeah, I mean, to be even talking about a New Year's Six possibility is just that's wild and outrageous. But here we are, and it's right there.
All right, time for the blatant promo. For those that want to listen to the game and listen to your call and listen to everything going on involving Coastal Carolina, not just this week, not just this football season, but all the way through, how do they do it?
You can go to goccusports.com and click on the live audio link, or you can pull up Hot Talk 99.5 FM, that's WRNN out of Myrtle Beach, and their link, the link to the audio is on their website, and they also have a tune-in link. If you Google search Hot Talk 99.5 FM in Myrtle Beach, the tune-in link will pop up there. It's all free audio, and you can tune us in, and we're on 1 hour prior to the game start on Saturday at 1 o'clock for the 2 o'clock kickoff.
Liberty and Coastal Carolina, the play-by-play voice of Coastal Carolina. Joe Cashion hanging out with us here in the OSG on CFB, one of our X Factors this week. Joe, as always, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for keeping us updated on everything going on there at Coastal. Have a great call this weekend. Enjoy the game.
John, thanks so much. Enjoy being on with you. It's always a fun conversation. Let's go, Shants.
What he said. More coming up after this. It's the OSG on CFB. Stick and stick. Be right back.
The OSG app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG app and listen to our podcasts from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Download the OSG app today. You're listening to the College Football X on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Welcome back to the OSG on CFB. Another one of our X Factors this week comes to us from the University of Buffalo and the Bulls. Hanging out with us, it is the color commentator for Bulls Radio, Scott Wilson. Scott, thanks for hanging out with us here on the X.
Hey, always glad to talk Bulls football.
All right, so I'm going to ask two incredibly wide-ranging questions here.
Okay.
First question, what is the college football world missing out on by not seeing Jaret Patterson on a weekly basis?
He has really built himself into one of the premier running backs in the country. And, just thinking this week after the monster game that he had, really the last 2 weeks, but especially last week against Kent State, it made me think back to the last time we had a player at Buffalo getting this type of attention was Khalil Mack. And he got his chance early in the season against Ohio State. And he kind of exploded on the scene with that game where he was just dominant. And the pandemic this year took away a game for the Bulls at Ohio State. And we were kind of looking forward this year to saying, geez, that's a big moment for Jaret and some of the other guys on the team to go out there and make some plays and shine. And that got taken away from him. And he has responded by taking it out on everybody else that they've played so far this year. He's just – first of all, he's a great kid. Just a great family. His brother's on the team. He's awesome as well. And boy, he is nearly impossible to tackle. I mean, there are some times where the defense plays what's going on in the play right. And he has the ability to get a guy in a hole, make a move, and all of a sudden the whole defense is wrong. And it's a big play. And really, for me, this season has been so special because he'll get 6 yards, and it feels like such a letdown. And it's unfair to him, but he's just been fantastic this season at making guys miss in the open field, getting to the second level, and just exploding past. He's gotten faster every season that he's been at Buffalo, and he's strong and he's been putting on a show.
All right, so then before I get into my second wide-ranging question, let me pull back the curtain here and go to the fourth wall. What was it like for you guys to call this game? Really, at first glance, if you're not paying attention, you're sitting there going, okay, so you guys went straight to conference play when it came to basketball, and you guys ended up with 111 on the board. It was a blowout for Buffalo. What's it like to call a football game where the over was probably destroyed halfway through the second quarter? You have a running back who runs for more than 4 spins on the dial, and you put 70 on the board, you tie a record. I mean, what's going on in the booth and on the sidelines and in your headsets for this one?
Well, the first play was the 62-yard run to get it to the 3, and then the next one he walked right up the middle for a touchdown, and we went to commercial, and we all said, okay, I think that this is going to be another big day for him. It wasn't really till halftime when he gets to halftime over 250 where – we go to commercial and there's 4 of us in the booth, and we all turn to each other and say, okay, we need to each pick one record and look up to make sure that we know what it is so that it's coming up. And we were at halftime preparing for 400 games, the touchdown record, the conference record. It was crazy. And for us, we had a pretty good handle on a 300-yard game from the week before and what that is like. But to just see the touchdowns mixed with the yardage was incredible. I think pound for pound, it's got to be one of the best overall rushing performances in college football history. And it was just amazing to watch him diced up a team, and they took him out at the end. And I mean, if you listen back to the broadcast, we had a similar reaction to the television broadcast, which is, oh my God, no. He's so close. We knew on the last drive that he needed 42 yards to get the record. They took the ball over after an onside kick at the 43. And, it was like, all right, this is happening. And I understand why he got taken out. I mean, if he gets to the 4-yard line and breaks his ankle, he doesn't get the record, and the best player on the team is out. But still, it was agonizing to see him get so close and not be able to get both records.
Now my second wide-ranging question. What's it like what are folks missing by not getting their dose of Maction? I know it started late, but it seems like every single game on the board is bananas for one reason or another. Yours for all of the reasons that it was last week. The over seems like an afterthought on a conference level this year. It's just like, yeah, okay, we'll get there. Don't worry about it. Put a number up, we'll go. What's it been like in this sprint that's been the Mid-American Conference this year?
Well, usually there's a lot of tight games and there's a buffer zone. So you can have it's been a long time since a team has gone undefeated into the MAC championship game. So usually there's a little bit of a buffer, those crossover games where an East team like Buffalo will have to play at Northern Illinois. That's a long trip. There's a lot to that. They're in the middle of nowhere. And you can kind of absorb a loss like that. And there's just no wiggle room this year. And I think that everybody's kind of putting their foot down to the floor and trying to get it done. And this year, I think the difference has been if you can play a little bit of defense, you got a huge advantage because everybody's offense has shown up and they've been vastly improved. I mean, Kent State, it's tough to say where Kent State really was just 2 seasons ago. They were in the wilderness, and that program was lost, and now they're scoring 42 points a game because they brought in like a Baylor style of offense, and they've done a nice job. And last week they play a team in Buffalo that I think would probably – I'm a little bit biased, but I think that they're probably the odds-on favorite to go to the MAC championship out of the East at this point. They were able to make like 5 plays on defense for the game, and they won by 20 points. And that's really has been the difference this year. These games are bananas. They always are. I mean, it's the cliche of MACtion for a reason because it's true. It's crazy things end up happening. And this year, boy, it's a couple of defensive plays have been the difference in winning or losing in almost every game, but especially for Buffalo.
I mean, it seems like at times you're watching the Destroyers at the Odd instead of watching UB playing outdoors. I mean, so far this season, 49 against Northern Illinois, 42 against Miami of Ohio, 42 against Bowling Green, 70 last week. And I'm sure that the discussion this week has been, okay, Warsolich is next on the list. What are you going to do for an encore against Ohio U? I mean, what's been the talk now?
Well, obviously, the last couple of days has been a lot of talk about Jaret Patterson and the records and just the pace that he's on. Really going back to last year, once we got into conference play last year, he really started to explode and put up massive numbers. And if you look at his last 11, 12 games, he's on par with like the 11-game season in 85 from Bo Jackson and Eddie George. So there's been a lot of attention to that. Playing down in Athens is hell on earth.
Yeah.
We haven't won there since 2008. It's usually we lose down there, they lose in Buffalo because those are the 2 longest trips both of us will have to take. And there's been a lot of attention with Jaret this week, and I'm interested to see how they deal with that. All the attention goes to Jaret. They've got a backup running back in Kevin Marks, who is awesome and had 97 yards last week, and absolutely no one will ever remember it. He had 97 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is a great game, and just no one will remember it. And now I think they've got a bullseye on their back for sure going down to Ohio. With all the attention, there's been a lot of talk about, some straw polls have Jaret Patterson at 5th or 6th in the Heisman voting, and the Bulls are basically 27th if you look at the top 25 poll from the AP. This is a spot they were in on the peripheral of the top 25 in 2018 when they had a 10-win season, but this feels a little bit different. There's a little bit more juice behind it this year, and I'm interested to see how they respond. They've been very focused, very intense this year about how good they think they can be and wanting to go out and prove it.
What's it been like from your perspective to see UB continue to grow and evolve and be a part of not just a regional discussion or a group of 5 discussion, but a regional discussion in the Northeast, now a national discussion when it comes to consistency and constant bowl appearances over the last handful of years?
Well, it's awesome to see where the program has come from. Lance Leipold, the coach, came in with an unbelievable pedigree from Wisconsin Whitewater in Division III, and I think the Bulls were lucky. He should have been in conversations for a long time and getting bigger jobs and just couldn't get an interview because places were afraid to give him a shot going from D3 to D1. And we gave him a shot, and it has worked out really, really well. He's got it's very similar to what they've done at Ohio, actually. He's been able to keep the core group of coaches together. The entire time he's been there, same offensive coordinator, same defensive coordinator. I think that's made a difference. They've done really well on recruiting, just being able to scout some guys under the radar and develop them. And they've come in. There's a new field house, indoor practice facility. They've redone the locker room. There's been a lot of just kind of inside things, little things that they've done to up the standards there. And then they started, and I think rightfully so, they started the rebuild with the lines, defensive line, offensive line. The O-line is a monster now. The defensive line has really been consistent the the last 3 or 4 seasons now, and it's a lot of fun knowing that they're going to be in every game. I wish, the season opener this year was supposed to be at Kansas State, and I felt really good about it going into it, and it got canceled. And then Arkansas State goes in there and wins. So, of course, the whole time we're like, oh, man, that would have been a really nice road Pac-12 win in our head that we already gave it to it. We already gave it to them. But it's been really fun just to see the steps of going. The first season they were right on the peripheral of 500, and then they had a lot of young faces come in 2-10 the second season, and then 6-6, and then a 10-win season, and then back into a bowl game last year. And it's what they've been building towards, and to see them reach those goals and to put enough talent around them to even take the next step, which is a conference championship, is really exciting.
Time for the promo. I know it's a 3:30 kick Saturday afternoon with Buffalo and Ohio U, but for those that want to keep an eye on one of the most exciting running backs in the country, regardless of division, regardless of geography, and everything else going on with the Bulls, how do they do it? Time to cut the promo.
All right. Well, we're on in Buffalo. We're on ESPN 1520. It's on the TuneIn app as well if you'd like to listen to myself and Paul Peck, who does the play-by-play, does a great job. And then it's on, I believe, CBS Sports Network this week. The final game against Akron, if I can sneak in an extra promo, is also going to be on CBS Sports. They just announced the kickoff recently. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a noon – or no, it's going to be 2 o'clock kickoff against Akron, which if you like seeing Jaret Patterson run, I have a feeling he's going to be getting the ball on that one against Akron as well. But this is a big game against Ohio. This has been a rivalry where they've traded every other year wins, and the two teams do not like each other. And this is a big hurdle for the Bulls if they can get a win finally down in Athens for the first time since the last time they won a MAC championship.
Scott Wilson, color commentator for the Bulls, hanging out with us here. Thanks for being a part of the OSG and CFP and being one of our X Factor interviews this week. Have a great call. May everything stick to the recording device of choice and success this season with the Bulls. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.
When we come back, the OSG on CFP continues. The X continues in 2 and 2. Stick and stay. We'll be right back.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football. Now, back to the College Football X.
Welcome back. John Wilkerson here with you, and Chris Mooneyham from 680 The Fan in Atlanta joins me, and as he does on a fairly regular basis here on the College Football X. And I wanted to bring you on, Chris, because if there's ever a year that we thought that head coaches in college football would have a safe year, we thought this would be it with all the COVID-19 craziness going on and whether games are going to be played or not and all the minutia that goes into that. But no, that's not the case. Will Muschamp was let go at South Carolina a few weeks ago. Now Derek Mason at Vanderbilt. The SEC seems to be leading the way and making some changes.
Yeah, just win, baby.
The Al
COVID
Davis philosophy,
damned,
I
right?
love it.
Yeah, COVID be damned. Just win, baby. Ratings are down. COVID is around. The attendance obviously is what it is, but you still got to win apparently, and that's that's football in the South, in the SEC, and here in the heart of the SEC in Atlanta, where we have so many fans that speckle all of the different universities across the Southeast. Obviously, I'm sure everyone knows who's listening to your podcast knows Atlanta's the capital of the South and the capital of so many of these fan bases. Besides the immediate areas, there's a lot of talk about Mason and the fact that he was let go, and what is he, the only guy I think who's led the program to 2 bowl games, but his record is, of course, what it is in 6 seasons at the helm of the program. I think maybe I was surprised by the fact that he was let go in season. The 0-8 start obviously kind of forces your hand if you believe that a move needs to be made in season. Derek's a really great guy. It's really too bad. It's the ugly part of this business, of course, for coaches and fans and administrators and those of us in the media. But, the thing for Vanderbilt that I always wonder about is, are you going to let someone continue to rebuild that program once every 2 years? Because that's what Vanderbilt is. They're going to have a pop year and then a half decent year, and then it becomes a rebuilding project all over again. And I guess he had those years, and now to start or to get out to an 0-8 record, I suppose in the end they just felt they couldn't go any further.
Vanderbilt, though, is kind of in a unique situation, being, I guess, the only university within inside a large city in the SEC. So they have the opportunity now, again, if they so choose, to bring in a coach that has some charisma, has some skill, and I always look at what Wake Forest has done with Dave Clawson. Dave Clawson, to me, is central casting for the type of coach that you need for a high academic institution. I mean, 10 wins is a phenomenal year at a Wake Forest and a phenomenal year at Vanderbilt. So, but there's just there's very few of those type of coaches. They don't grow on trees. And I don't think you're going to be able to get a David Shaw to come to Vanderbilt or a Pat Fitzgerald to come to Vanderbilt, who have proven that they can put together some winning seasons at high academic institutions. It's a hard thing to do, and that's what Vanderbilt's going to have to look for.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've also heard a lot of talk from a lot of folks saying that Vanderbilt needs to embrace who they are, not compete with Alabama and Georgia and Florida and LSU and Auburn, and not try to recruit with them. And obviously they don't really. And I've heard a lot of chatter here over the last few days about them maybe thinking about going to a triple option or some sort of an option attack from a brand new hire, in the effort or the thought of potentially being the outlier, being like a Georgia Tech was in the ACC, the last vestige of that in the ACC, and kind of making it a little more difficult for teams to scheme against you. I understand that thought process, but I just don't know that I really jive to that thought process. I'm 50-50 on it, so let's leave that part there. To dive into what you were bringing up, I wonder about a high-profile coach. John, I just don't see it happening. I really don't. I think maybe their aim is to bring in an established, potentially hot coordinating coaching hire. Someone who has established themselves over the last 2, 3, 4 years as a top-flight coordinator who's now ready for his first head coaching job. I was about to say big-time head coaching job, but, in the SEC. In the SEC, even if it is, and I don't mean to be slanderous when I say this, even if it is Vanderbilt, I think you know what I mean. But in the SEC, and then cut your teeth in what is, I guess, still potentially the best conference in college football. And yes, I did mean to say it that way. So I think that's probably, yeah, I did. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to alienate some folks by saying that here in the Deep South, but it is what it is. I think that's probably the way to go. Is with the hot young coordinating hire. But I got to be honest, I'm a little mixed on that one too. In other words, I'm not really sure I know exactly what Vanderbilt should do moving forward.
Well, you bring up the coordinator role, and when you look at some lists, I'll bring you up some of the coordinators that have been mentioned in some of the lists. First of all, Barry Odom, who had head coaching experience at Missouri, at Arkansas as a defensive coordinator, and has reborn the Arkansas defense. He's a name that's getting some traction as far as Vanderbilt. But the other coordinators that I've seen on the list, Arkansas's offensive coordinator, Kendall Briles, has been mentioned. And then Brian Schottenheimer, the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator, has been mentioned as well. And that one intrigues me because you just brought up I don't want to say gimmick offenses, but Brian Schottenheimer bringing Marty Ball to Vanderbilt would be kind of cool.
Yeah, and I could see Briles too, by the way, because of the SEC connection and the Deep South connection, the family connection, knowing the South the way that he will. I've also heard a name that's been floating around our station here at 680 The Fan, 93.7 FM, Atlanta sports leader, talking about Tony Elliott over at Clemson.
At Clemson, yeah.
As far as, the thing about Elliott is, and I think that would be an appropriate thought process if they were to pursue it. But my thing about Elliott is, I always wonder with coordinators who have basically a dream job, is it really worth taking that leap into the toughest conference potentially in college football at a job like Vanderbilt when you really just kind of have it made? The word is on the street. I got some people. I got a guy over at Clemson. I'm doing the air quotes here. Elliott wants a head coaching job, but he loves where he's at. If they were to win another national championship, especially this year, then I think that might be a possibility. But loving where he's at, loving the future of that program, I'm not so sure about that. With Briles, I think with Arkansas trending up, I think it's a possibility that he could stay there as well. Vanderbilt might find themselves in a bit of a pinch here because of what we brought up earlier with COVID, the uncertainty of next year, extra years for players as far as eligibility goes. So some of your best players are going to stay in your program for now an extra year. So for that reason, I think Vanderbilt might be in a little bit of a pinch in trying to lure some of those highly sought-after coordinators.
Of course, South Carolina is looking for a head coach as well. A lot of Twitter traction about Shane Beamer, who had an interview at South Carolina. That's been getting some Twitter traction. I think I brought that up when brought his name up when you and I discussed when Will Muschamp was let go. So nothing definite there, but just some Twitter traction on Shane Beamer. And, of course, he's got the bloodlines. His dad, Frank Beamer, obviously is a legend at Virginia Tech, led them to many ACC championships. And he looks like he's ready for a head coaching opportunity in the SEC. He's familiar with South Carolina. He was on Steve Spurrier's staff. Is this the right fit?
I think it could be the right fit. And to echo a lot of the things we talked about before too, not just the right fit, but knows the South, knows the state fairly well. I guess technically Virginia is still a southern state, right? From his days with his in that history, but South Carolina. Let's parlay it too into the Vanderbilt talk. I think South Carolina is a far more attractive job. They've got to be very, very careful with who they hire as well, because South Carolina is one of those teams. I've used them as an example for years and years, like I have with Georgia Tech here in town. Georgia Tech and South Carolina are very similar in the regard that they find themselves surprisingly in a lot of top tens when it comes to recruits, if you follow my thought process. Mm-hmm. But then when kids will make that first cut, those teams sometimes will fall by the wayside. And so what I'm getting at with that is, if you've got the right guy to take over the program, then potentially he's able to get to that next level of recruitment. If you get the right guy to come in, he's able to keep a guy like, as we brought up, I guess it was 2 weeks ago when we were together, like Gunnar Stockton, the highly recruited quarterback out of Northeast Georgia. So I like the thought of Beamer, especially if you're going to try to keep somebody like Stockton as a recruit.
Now, some other coaches on a very hot seat. Tom Herman's name is being brought up. Texas, as his seat at his office is almost nuclear, I guess. You wonder, will Texas make a move this year? I mean, it's been somewhat of a disappointing year for Texas fans. But that buyout is very cost prohibitive. But I'm not sure if money's an issue at Texas. I don't think it ever has been. But is it time for Texas to move on from Tom Herman, or do we give him another shot?
I think he gets another shot. Yeah,
I do too.
My opinion aside, I think he gets at least one more year. I really do. You know what? Matter of fact, I'm going to go back to that same example. Texas has not recruited the way Texas recruited in the 90s and the early 2000s. Texas is not Texas anymore. You speak to an 18-year-old kid, they have no idea about the history of the Texas Longhorns football program. They just don't know. And the kids are far more savvy these days than I think a lot of people like to give them credit for in doing their research and their history on these programs. But for the most part, kids are pretty singular-minded, and they'll stay focused on the last few years. I think that Herman can increase his recruiting there, and that he can get everybody back on board. Now, people have bristled at his attitude inside of the program, and boosters have sort of bristled at his attitude at times, his demeanor, and rightfully so. He can be an abrasive guy. I think the biggest mistake he made was when he had the chance at the LSU job and then passed it up, by the way. And that's probably where I'll let that drop, yeah.
Here's the thing about Texas and recruiting. When Texas A&M joined the SEC, you understand the SEC really didn't resonate in the state of Texas as that much at all, because Texas and Texas A&M, your flagship universities, were in the Big 12. When Texas A&M made the shift, now the SEC became relevant in the state of Texas, and that gave Texas A&M a leg up, if you will, on Texas as getting the best recruits out of the Dallas-Fort Worth, the Houston, and the San Antonios, because now the SEC resonated in the Lone Star State, and I think that's another reason why Texas is having a much harder time getting the guys that they always got. I mean, you go back to Darrell Royal and Fred Akers. I mean, they got whoever they wanted, and they don't. It doesn't happen anymore.
And John, those guys were also pulling kids from Mississippi and Alabama in those days. They were pulling kids from Louisiana, from maybe not the heart of SEC country, but really, really close. They were pulling kids from Tennessee. They were pulling kids from Arkansas, which is now, of course, in the SEC. Pulling kids from Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama. And that's not happening the way that it was before. I think Herman, when he passed up that LSU job, I thought that would have been the perfect fit for him at that time, and of course with his history. But, he made the decision that he made. That is what it is. We move on past that. And I still have to believe as a historian and as a broadcaster and an analyst that Texas can get it back, but I do wonder aloud.
Well, of course, the other head coaching nuclear hot seat is that of Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. And I'm just wondering if we're getting a critical mass with that, with Michigan's performances this year, and with the Detroit Lions job open. I don't know. It almost is as if that's a good thing for Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I think Harbaugh's going to step away, John. I really do. I think he's going to step away. I don't think they're going to have to worry about firing him. He has, I believe, 1 year. Yeah, next year is the last year on his contract, if memory serves. Yep. The buyout would be 6.3, I think, is the number. Maybe it's 6.5.
6.3 is correct.
Thank you. I know I was very close, and so I don't think they'd be afraid to let him go. They don't want to pay the money, is what I'm hearing, but I don't think they're going to have to worry about it. To be honest with you, I think that John is that Harbaugh is done. Jim's done. I did it again. I always do that. I always.
John Harbaugh's with the Ravens.
There it is. I literally always do that. I did that on the air just last year, yet again. But anyway, I think he's done. I really do. I think he is going to step away. It was the perfect opportunity. I will shake my head forever and a day that it hasn't really worked out up there. I really, really will. I was completely wrong on this one. I'm not afraid to pat myself on the back when I'm right, but partly because I'm not afraid to tell you when I was wrong or if I am wrong. And that is one that I was absolutely wrong on. I thought it was the perfect fit for him, obviously because of his history and his playing days. But I thought, Michigan's a pretty high-level academic university. People don't realize. And then with the football thrown in, I thought because of his days at Stanford, he could have a lot of success there. It just didn't work out. And I think because of that, I think he sees the writing on the wall. He's about done dealing with all the criticism, especially the what he believes is unfair media criticism. And I think he's ready to step away. I'm not so sure that next year he will coach, however. I just want to throw that out there really quick. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes a year off, and then you find him in the National Football League in 2022.
So he's sitting next to Urban Meyer in the Fox studio next year.
That
would be interesting.
Is he?
Unless Urban Meyer's
is
at Texas.
He a TV guy? Is he a TV guy? I don't know. Is he a TV guy? Maybe he couldn't go to the Big Ten Network, could he? Because I don't know that he would that they would welcome him with open arms there. I don't know that he's a TV guy. I really look, this guy. He's a big family guy too. I could really see him sitting out a year and then finding his way to the National Football League, not next season, but the year after.
So go ahead and start the rumors about Urban Meyer going to Texas and Hugh Freeze going to Michigan.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, Hugh Freeze is not going to. We talked about this too, and I talked about this on the air last week. As a matter of fact, a week ago before the Thanksgiving holiday, Freeze is I think may surprise some people. I don't think he's going to jump after a job necessarily if it's really not what he wants after this season. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him come back for another year. They've got a lot of talent at Liberty and a lot of guys who are going to be coming back next year. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if you may have just nailed it, my friend.
Yeah, he's comfortable there, and they're going to make him happy. Mm-hmm. So why chase after the first job that opens up? We're with Chris Mooneyham of 680 The Fan in Atlanta, and I wanted to bring up something you and I talked about before we started taping. And it's something that really concerns us about college football right now is the fact that, by the fact that COVID-19 is happening, the attendance is way down. We knew that was going to happen, but the TV ratings are starting to free fall. And I think that has got a lot of people nervous. What obviously COVID is part of the equation. But is there something else that's missing here as far as the college football and why it's not resonating?
John, let's echo one more cast we did together from about maybe a month ago, when I was bringing up an idea that I absolutely loathe, yet it's my idea. I'm fervent about it, and unfortunately, I think it is the answer for college football. I think that. Unfortunately, in this modern era, in the old days, John, you and I are not so separated age-wise, and in the old days, it really meant something to win a conference championship. I mean, that was it really, really did. It meant something to win a conference championship. It meant something to be in the national championship discussion come the middle of November. The way the modern college football hierarchy is sitting now, our college football playoff teams really, look at where we're at now. We all really pretty much realize that there's only 6 teams that have a shot of getting to the championships, to the Final Four. And I think that part of the reason viewership is down 30% overall. Even the biggest ball games, because what you always run into with people who argue with me about this, there's a really great broadcaster across America, a guy by the name of John Kincaid. And John and I used to go back and forth about this all the time. And he would say, yeah, but Chris, those are just the lower level games that are down. The biggest ball games still have the same viewership they've always had. The thing is, John, that's not the case this year. Even the biggest ball games are not being watched the way they have in the past. Now, why is that? Because everyone's at home, for the most part. You would think that all the ratings would be spiking through the roof. And we all said that when we were without sports. Remember, that was part of our mantra. That was part of what we were talking about. My gosh, can you imagine what the ratings are going to be when sports comes back? It just hasn't produced that way. And I think that, unfortunately, in this modern era of college football, what has happened is when your team is out of the running for the Final Four, fans, with as much as we have now in our lives with technology and our families and work and all the extracurricular activities that we can get involved in, people are just tuning away from sports when they realize their team doesn't have a realistic chance of winning a national championship or a world championship. That's just the way that it is. And that's why I pitched you my idea here on the air, I guess about a month ago, of expanding the playoff, even though I'm not really a massive fan of extending the playoff, because what it will do is it will keep teams in the running longer, and it will keep fans glued to their televisions longer.
Well, it kind of reinforces something I've always felt about college football, in that it's a communal experience. I mean, you could have a dog game at a large university, but the tailgating, the hanging out with friends at the game, that's still resonating in college football. Maybe to a point where the game was kind of secondary. But now with the fact that you're home, and when you're home, there's other choices out there for you. You can watch a movie.
Yeah.
You could you could load up the van and go hiking with the family instead of watching a college football game. And so now that we don't have that communal aspect of college football for families or for friends, it's why bother investing time in a game where both teams are going to have losing seasons and the game is meaningless. Invest your time somewhere else. I can understand investing your time at the stadium when you're tailgating with your buddies and having a good time. You go inside, you have a good time. Maybe you stay till midway through the third quarter, then you go back to the parking lot. I mean, that's the experience of college football. That has been taken away, and it doesn't resonate to TV viewership. You and I are kind of rare. We're going to still watch some of these games because that's who we are. Now, I got to admit, for me, it's hard because there's no atmosphere in the stadium. And let's face it, when there's some kind of atmosphere in the stadium, we're going to stay locked on for a little bit. So I think that's another reason why college football has taken a little bit of a free fall in the ratings.
Yeah, well said, eloquently said, and I couldn't agree more. And let me throw one more on top of the fire, one more log. What's the word I want to use? The fraying at rivalries, the movement in college football.
Yes.
The changing of conference affiliations, losing Texas and Texas A&M, losing some of these rivalries that meant so much to so many people, where you would sit down with your son every year and you would watch Nebraska and Oklahoma. You would watch Texas and you know what I mean? And well, you know this because you're from that part of the country too, and it's just not the same anymore. Okay. That's part of it.
I mentioned this on Bill Shanks' show last week. There were 4 rivalries that were appointment television in my household every year. Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Texas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, A&M. Only one.
And 3 of those are gone.
Only one still remains. And
that really does play into it.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's the big reason why the communal aspect of college football is down. I think about like my 18-year-old son. I mean, rivalries really don't resonate to him because the ones that have been going on forever are gone. I think of Pitt and Penn State. I was huge in Western Pennsylvania. They play maybe twice every 20 years now. Those are huge. There's a reason why Ohio State, Michigan is revered. The Iron Bowl is revered. We didn't get, although they're regional in scale, we didn't get Clemson, South Carolina. We didn't get Georgia Tech. We didn't get Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and
that's a big difference.
And then also another byproduct of the expansion of these conferences too, and I'll bring it back to the Deep South here in Atlanta, and a lot of the folks that I speak with, Auburn and Florida playing twice in a 12-year span.
Yeah.
I mean, that is unbelievably foreign to so many people. Auburn, Alabama, and Florida playing once, I think, in a 13-year stretch was the number. Maybe it was 11. I'm close. Again, it's somewhere in that stretch. It's just it's part of what is so burned into the consciousness of a college football fan that you sit around all year and you wait for it. My son is 5 years old, going on 6. I had children late in life. And I was talking to somebody on the phone the other day about not getting to see Georgia and Georgia Tech this year. And after I get off the phone, he asked me, he says, "Daddy, how come Georgia and Georgia Tech aren't playing?" And then I kind of explained it to him, as best I could without diving too far into some of the details, obviously, with COVID. And he said, "Why is it a big deal?" And I spent more time talking about that and telling him old stories. You know what I mean? As far as he could understand, as a 5-year-old, of course. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Oh, Georgia versus Georgia Tech." And he just kind of shook his head as he looked at me. And I said, exactly. You see, but a lot of those same conversations are now, John, lost to time.
Yeah, that's sad. And but I will say something about the SEC. They recognized that when they were expanding, and they've done the best they can to preserve those rivalries in the appropriate time. Those rivalries have always been played. So I think that's one of the big reasons why the SEC is still so popular, is because Alabama and Tennessee still play third Saturday in October. Sometimes it's the fourth Saturday, but they still play in late October, and Georgia and Florida still play, and Auburn and Georgia still play, even though they're on opposite ends of the divisions. So right. I think they did a good job in preserving those rivalries where the other leagues haven't, and especially with the expansion or the moving on to different conferences. I mean, to me, it's a crying shame that Texas A&M don't play anymore. Arkansas and Texas don't play anymore, because those stories are lost in time now. It's a sad case. Well, Chris, tell us what you're doing now. Promote what you're doing.
Well, I'll be doing some fill-in work. It's a holiday time. You know, everybody's taking their vacations, and I'm the ultimate freelance guy. You know me. I think I worked for 20 different either radio stations, TV stations, or media conglomerates over the last year, and I'm back at it again. And the holidays, of course, is one of my busiest times. So you can find me at 680 The Fan here in Atlanta. You can find me traipsing along on ESPN or Fox, or who knows where I'll be come the holiday season. But you can catch me on Twitter at Mooneyham on air.
The key word to that is he's cashing paychecks.
Let's hope it stays that way. Let's hope it stays that way as long as we can get this COVID thing under control.
Sounds good. Chris, I appreciate you joining the College Football X.
Hey, thanks for having me, John.
Much more to come as the College Football X continues after this timeout.
Like the voice you're hearing on this podcast? It could be on your production, too. Just go to goodpipesvo.com. That's goodpipesvo.com and reach out to Steve Henderson on the Contact Us page. Go to the website, click on the Contact Us page, and then see what Steve's Good Pipes can do for your upcoming project.
And that's going to do it this week for the College Football X. We thank our guests, Nick Pierce from the Liberty Radio Network, Joe Cashion, the voice of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, and Scott Wilson, football analyst for the Buffalo Bulls on Learfield IMG College. Check out our Twitter page at OSG Sports with a rant, a comment. Maybe we'll read it on the air. So for Jon Nelson, for John Wood, I'm John Wilkerson. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the games this weekend.
Thanks for listening to the College Football X. You can find this and past shows by downloading the OSG Sports app on your mobile device. And enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.